Chairman McCormick.
Present.
Council Harder.
Present.
And Council Boone.
Present.
First item on the agenda is 10623, an ordinance to amend the code of the City of Gardner by deleting Chapter 357 entitled Vacant and Abandoned Buildings and Chapter 493 entitled Nuisances and adding a new Chapter 500 entitled Blighted Nuisance, Vacant and Abandoned Properties, which chapter provides public safety measures for blighted, nuisance, vacant and abandoned properties, prohibitions and penalties for the violation of the chapter. Mr. Mayor, do you want to lead things off with any discussion?
Sure, if that's okay with you, Mr.
Summary?
Chairman.
Yeah.
So attached to the packet, you'll see that Colin Smith, my aide, did provide a one-page summary about the changes that the ordinance does move forward in. There are two different sections here, so that's why we've included the cover pages. The document that says ordinance legislative document, this is what the new ordinance would read as we go forward there, but we have also included the two existing chapters that we have now, as well as communications from the relevant department heads that oversee these matters. What this particular ordinance would do is combine our vacant and abandoned building ordinance with our nuisance ordinance into one specific chapter. The reason being for that, other than just general housekeeping, is that there were sections of the two different chapters of the code that contradicted each other, that had different fine structures, that said one department head could cite for one particular thing, but then in the other ordinance it had another department head could do the same thing. So this is combining them all into one uniform process. It also does increase the fine structure if a nuisance or a vacant and abandoning status is reached. That way the city has a little more teeth to it, so that we can go after some problem properties before they become an issue like we're seeing in the downtown with some of the buildings that are there with different absentee landlord issues. So this ordinance is something that's being used to help address those items there. The majority of the substance that's in this ordinance is already what's on the books. For instance, in the summary sheet, you'll see that the ordinance mandates that properties in the Gardner be maintained in good repair, vegetation over 12 inches high, excessive peeling, flaking, chipped paint. Those are already existing in the ordinances that we have in the book. However, it codifies them in a way just so that they are more prominent and visible, so that if a member of the public is going to look at what do I need to do to maintain my property standards, it's all in this one spot, not look here and then look here and forget to look here. So that's really the main pull of this ordinance that's been proposed to you here, and Commissioner Jean and Director Saunders are the two department heads who would oversee this. We do also have a letter of support from Chief LeBoy that was received this morning. He was unable to be here with us this morning because we do have two recruits graduating from the Massachusetts Fire Academy this morning, and that'll be included in the council's packet moving forward. I just didn't get it until this morning, so that's why I wasn't included today. And if there's any questions, I'm sure any of the three of us would be happy to answer those.
Do you have anything to add?
I don't. I think it's important to give the public one place to look for all of the answers rather than going to two or three different spots, because it makes it very confusing. I can tell you it's hard for me sometimes, so the public has virtually no chance of finding the answers.
Yeah, I'm in support of it. I think it's a good idea. It's all in one place. It will give us more teeth. I know I keep saying that, but it makes sense to me, absolutely. And there's no changes to my code. It's all still here. So.
Yeah, the only question I have is that the ordinance empowers the city's building commissioner and director of public health to enforce these mandates. So how is that going to work out? Is hey, you take this one, or you take this one. Who's gonna take the initiative? And when do we decide who's has the empowerment? I guess is my question.
How it's been done before is what's related to that code. So the sanitary code is overseen by the health department. So that's where you have the grass vegetation size. That's where you have issues of lead paint, chipping, or things of that nature. Issues that are related to the building code, there's a hole in the roof, the bricks falling, things like that would be the building commission.
Very good, thank you. No, I'm good. Thank you.
Any motions?
Make a motion to send to the council for approval as written under 10623.
I'll second it.
A motion by Councilor Hart, second by Councilor Boone to move to approve to the full council. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 10624, an ordinance to amend the code of the City City of Gardner by adding new chapter 501 entitled Outdoor Restaurant Seating and Services, which chapter provides for definition of outdoor dining services, licensing procedures, and hours of operation. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This basically codifies what Governor Baker issued as emergency proceedings during the COVID-19 pandemic as a way to help restaurants when they weren't able to have indoor seating. We saw several restaurants here in Gardner, including Southside Grill, Gabby's Diner, the Blue Moon Diner, a couple different other places. The ale houses had outdoor seating for some time, really take off in the '99. Take off as a result of having that outdoor seating and actually get some increased popularity there, because in the summertime people just like being outside. So this takes what Governor Baker put in his emergency executive order that has since expired once the state of emergency was lifted, and puts that into our ordinances so that we can continue with that process moving forward. What this would do is allow a restaurant that wants to have outdoor seating submit an application to the building department for review to make sure it meets all zoning requirements, parking requirements, and just taking away some of the parking spaces that are there, that they still meet the minimum zoning requirements for parking for the location, so we're not creating a backlog and things of that nature, so that they can get that license for having outdoor seating. Now for places like the Blue Moon Diner, where they take a portion of their parking lot and put the tent up and have some seats outside, that may change from year to year, and if they change the layout, they'd have to come back and get that license again. However, places like the 99, who is now installing a new brick patio outside with a permanent outdoor structure that they can use year after year, that would just be once you have your layout, you can submit that and your license is good until you change that layout. And that would be seen in the annual inspections that are required of all restaurants to do by both the building department and the health department to make sure that layout still stays the same. So that's how we can check the enforcement of that matter as well. But this is just something being done to help our restaurants move forward and to help increase the options that we have here in the city.
Mr. G, do you have any?
I don't have anything really to add to that, other than I think it's a great idea. I think everyone would agree that sometimes it's nice to eat outside.
Yeah, we have no problems. It just, as we have done with the temporary, we will work with building department to oversee, make sure everything lines up and there's food safety.
Just a couple last stuff on my end, Mr. Chairman, that I forgot. Leominster and Fitchburg have also passed similar ordinances like this based off of the governor's executive order. And we do have a letter of support from 10 of the different local restaurants, or not local, but all of the restaurants in the city that will be included in the packet coming soon as well. That was received yesterday from a group of businesses.
I don't have any questions. I do want to say that I think it's very good that we have this in front of us with the nuisance vacant lighted buildings along with this outdoor seating, because some of that does need to be addressed for some of the buildings. So, and I have no problem with either.
I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion to send this to the council for approval as written, number 10624.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilor Harvey, second by Councilor Bloom, to move item 10624 to the full council for approval. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Item 1065, an ordinance to amend chapter 312 of the Code of the City of Gardner entitled Animals.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have our Senior Animal Control Officer, Kristen Salerno, here, as well as our Acting Police Chief, Vin Alfano. This ordinance change came as a result of conversations that I had with Officer Salerno, basically speaking about how there are some ways in which our ordinances haven't kept up with the different general laws of the Commonwealth that govern how those ordinances have to be written in terms of the fine structure, in terms of definitions of how our officers are called. We have switched to calling them animal control officers to be in line with state law. Our ordinances still call them dog officers. So bringing that up to code there, the number of days that we are legally required to hold animals at the shelter that we pick up, different things like that just have gone out of date because this ordinance really hasn't been looked at since the early 2000s. So bringing all of those changes in the requirements that we're supposed to have in our ordinances per state law into what our ordinances have here. Officer Salerno can speak a lot more eloquently about these topics than I can, just because it's something that she deals with every day. But the main part of it is the fine structures and the amount of days for the different procedures in the animal control facilities and officers that they do.
Officer Leonard, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, I think it's good to be up to date with Mass General law, and like you said, they hadn't been looked at, and where the original, our bylaws stated that, the city code stated we would hold the dog for 10 days. And Massachusetts general law changed that to 7 days because the dogs would kind of craze out after a week of being in the pen. So it makes them more adoptable if it's the 7 days mentally for them. And the fee schedule was changed, I believe in 2020 for the fines of like running around, running at large. It's not $25, it starts at $50 and so on. And they went away with the calendar year as well. So it's really good to get caught up because if they read the bylaws and see $25 and question why am I getting fined for $50? So it helps the public as well.
And a lot of this deals with, if I may, Mr. Chairman, a lot of this deals too with the idea that because the city is a subset of the Commonwealth itself, our ordinances can be more stringent than state law, but cannot be less stringent than state law. So since state law has increased its fine structure, we can't have fines that are lower than that because the state standard is here. We can't go under the state standard. If we wanted to, we could go over. However, we can't be less than what the state is requiring of us.
Good, thank you. Entertain a motion?
I make a motion to send this to the council for approval as written. Number 10625.
Second.
Motion by Councilor Hart, second by Councilor Boone to send item 10625 for full approval to the council. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Our final item, 10626, an ordinance to amend the code of the city of Gardner by deleting chapter 318 entitled Arcades.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a section of the city code that was put in 1982 and has never been enforced. This ordinance, as it sits in the books today, says that we can only have one arcade per every 10,000 people who reside here in the city. So that would cap us at 2 arcades as we have 21,000 people who live here. However, per the definitions in this ordinance, a arcade is defined as any location that has 2 or more electronic amusement devices that it defines as low as a pinball machine or a crane pickup machine there. So Walmart, the 2 bowling alleys, all of the social clubs in the city, the 2 veterans places that we have, all of those places per the ordinance are defined as arcades. So that Walmart having those 2 crane machines in their lobby there would eat up one of our arcades. Now obviously that hasn't been followed as we have almost 8 to 12 places that meet the definition of our arcade here. And so it's something that hasn't been enforced, it's something that we haven't even looked at, and I don't think people remembered it was in the books until we just were going through seeing what we had at one point. The second section of this ordinance requires any owner of an arcade, per the definitions of an arcade in this ordinance, to call the police department every time they suspect that someone in their facilities is under the age of 18 during school operating hours. That has now been covered by state truancy laws, and quite frankly, I don't think it's the responsibility of a business owner to decide whether or not someone looks under 18 or not and then call the police when there's no proof of someone actually being under the age of 18 or not. So it's just something that really seems redundant and just out of practice and hasn't even been followed. So it's something we're just looking to get off the books and clean things up.
Dean, do you have any?
I-
This would have fallen under your purview, or this would have fallen under
Police department.
police? I'm assuming you have no input.
No, I have no objection at all to that. I think it makes sense. I can tell you in my career, I've never received a call from anyone violating arcade laws. So I agree. I think it should be passed.
Questions?
Probably don't want to speak. Can we bring poker machines back to the social clubs? I didn't say that. No further questions. Thank you.
I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion to send this to the council for approval as written. number 10626.
Second.
Motion by Councilor Harden, second by Councilor Boone to send item 10626 to the full council for approval. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Now we'll go to new business.
No, I want to say thank you all, thank you to all the department heads, and it was very nice meeting you.
Great to see you.
Yes, and thank you, Michael, for everything you do. Mhm. That's it.
I have nothing further, thank you.
I will echo thanks to all the department heads for all the hard work they do, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your time to walk us through these ordinance changes. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Councilor Harden, second by Councilor Boone to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.